Providing rice during the pandemic in the Philippines, community services in London, England, and feeding the needy in Edinburgh, Scotland. All this and much more coming up next. Hello and welcome to Mission 360. I'm Gary Krause. Today's program is coming to you from the city of Edinburgh in Scotland. And behind me you can see St. Giles Cathedral. And it probably dates back to the 12th century. But of particular interest to us is the year 1559. And that's the year when a man named John Knox became the minister. John Knox, of course, was one of the great figures of the Protestant Reformation, and he was the father of the Reformation here in Scotland. And he became the minister in that year, and this church then became Protestant. And on today's program, we're going to be looking at mission all around the world. We're going to be looking at mission right here in Scotland. But first up, let's travel to the Philippines to see how the church responded to a basic human need during the COVID pandemic.
When disaster strikes, the most vulnerable often struggle the most. The year 2020 will always be remembered as one of the most challenging times in modern history. The COVID-19 pandemic put low-income families around the world in difficult positions. Some have been unable to provide for their families' most basic needs and put food on the table. Many countries went into lockdown to try to slow the spread of the coronavirus. In the Philippines, the sudden closure of stores and other facilities, as well as the abrupt drop in tourism, caused low-income families to lose their jobs. They struggled to meet their basic needs, which included buying a staple food, rice. This quickly caught the attention of Dr. Samuel Wang, an evangelist in the Southern Asia-Pacific region. He coordinated a fundraising project to help those who were most affected.
When we learned this situation, we are greatly agitated. We want to thank our God. It is His love that motivated us and inspired us. No matter where we are all together because we are one family in the Lord. Thank the Lord for His great love, and also thank the love of our brothers and sisters.
Dr. Wang's team worked hard to give out sacks of rice. During the first distribution, over 1,200 families received rice and Adventist literature. Community members such as tricycle drivers, care group members, and utility personnel came to collect this critical food for their families. The team adhered to recommended social distancing protocols and safety health measures to prevent the spread of the disease. Despite risk to their own health, they believed that God was leading them to care for others.
As we know, from March 15, the Philippines is locked down, and we understand that the people in everywhere near the capital is having a difficult time, and especially in Ceylon over here, the tricycle drivers, their business is all shut down, and they don't even have any rice and food at home. So we understand the situation, and we try to raise some funds to help them. So finally, within 11 hours, we have the money we need to supply for 2,000 families over here. For each family, we would provide 10 kg rice, so that will help them to go through the difficult time until the lockdown is over.
Care group leaders at the Southern Asia-Pacific Division headquarters submitted the names of families they knew who potentially needed food assistance. Underprivileged families living in shanties and makeshift houses in 6 different locations in Ceylon were some of the recipients of the rice donations. The second batch of rice distribution was organized 4 days later for nearly 900 families. 400 sacks of rice were given out in total. Adventist literature was included because the team wanted to minister to the people's spiritual needs too.
So our members in different places, take the opportunity. This is the right time that we can really minister to people in their needs. And we are just following the steps of Jesus Christ, that He spent His time for the poor, healing them, helping them in their difficulties. So this is what Seventh Adventist is all about.
As a tricycle driver, receiving this 10 kilograms of rice is something really special to us. I am thankful. I am overwhelmed to receive this gift from the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
My guest is Duncan, and Duncan, you are engaged in a ministry called Cook-In. What is this?
Cook-In is a food bank. Cook-In is a way of helping some of the 2.4 million people in Scotland on or below the poverty line. But we specifically target people who are elderly, mentally, physically disabled, wheelchair bound, terminally ill or homeless. I go around supermarkets and cash and carries all over Edinburgh 7 days a week, collecting food to bring it back to our wonderful church here, Edinburgh Seventh-day Adventist Church in Granton, where we sort it out and put it away. On Wednesday we deliver to the local community here, and on Sunday we deliver further afield to almost 30 miles from here in some places.
So what sort of need is there in this community?
Massive. Unbelievable. We have people living in their homes only putting on electricity or gas to cook. We have people who parents will only eat once a day so their kids can eat 2 or 3 times a day. That's how bad it is in places here in Scotland.
So what inspired you to get involved?
I had an accident at work. I shattered my hands, my wrists and my forearms. My hands were like this, all bandaged up. The only part of my hands I could use was the tips of my fingers. I couldn't dress myself, feed myself, go to the toilet myself. I got nothing from the government, no help at all. I wasn't disabled enough. My wife who's studying to be a nurse, we almost lost everything. Try living on £80 a month. Doesn't work. We went £17,000 into debt. For me and Janine, this is paying it forward. You never know when you're going to need help. So we're just paying it forward. We're helping those that need it. And it is far too important. We got so big so quick. In the last 2 and a bit years, I've given up work just to do this. I'm doing 300 days a year, minimum, just to keep going. This is God's work. This is my mission. This is my calling. And that is why my wife supports me the way she does. She works a full-time job. She also volunteers here. It was my wife's. She was the one who had the idea of this. And we just came in it and we ran with it. And we're still going 52 months later. We've fed 246,000 plus meals. We've helped 36,000 families. And we're not even going yet.
So Duncan, tell me about somebody whose life you've impacted. Tell me a story of someone.
I'll give you a perfect example. We help at a hostel. This is a building where 12 children who have been kicked out of their family homes for various reasons live. And they live with 2 social workers. They have their own bedroom, but they share a kitchen and they share a living room. Before we helped them, there was lots of fighting and trouble in the building because they were stealing food of each other because they didn't have enough. Perfect example, we brought them 2 of the Christmas crates. All 12 of them sat and had a Christmas meal that lasted 5 hours. There hasn't been a single fight in the building in 2 years because we've been giving them food. The kids are learning to cook, the kids are learning to look after themselves, the kids are looking are getting to learn to respect each other and make friends and survive. That's one story. Another story was an old lady. She was 89 years old the first time I met her. She's wearing 5 sets of clothing and 3 duvets over her. She's sitting in a dark house, no heating, no nothing. Just by giving her a bag of food every week, she could save up enough money to have all her heating and electric on right through the entire year, especially Christmas. In this country, they get £400 a year, which is a Christmas winter fuel bonus for the elderly. She was keeping it to keep herself out of debt. She was 89 years old.
Wow.
She's 93 now. She's doing fantastic. She loves us to bits and we love her to bits.
What a blessing.
Yes, she is a blessing. The spirit of this woman, the joy in her heart will always bring a smile to my face.
So Duncan, you're a relatively new Seventh-day Adventist. Why is it important for Christians to be involved in this sort of ministry?
I take my lead from Jesus. Jesus fed the 5,000 and then not very long later he fed the 4,000. He was always helping the poor. He was always helping the needy. He was always healing the sick. This is our mission. This is part of Seventh-day Adventist ethos. We're just following it and we're just making the most of it. We're doing what we are destined to do. We're doing what we have to do as Adventists. We are going out into our community. We are showing God's grace, God's compassion, God's love, God's mercy. We are giving these people hope. People who don't have hope. People who have less than nothing. And that, if that's not God's way, if that's not the way of Jesus, then I've read the wrong book.
Duncan, thank you so much for sharing with us today in this weather, which for me is freezing cold, but you're in a t-shirt. It drives me crazy.
Well, thank you for coming to Scotland. Thank you for visiting Cooking, and safe journeys home.
Thank you. May God bless you.
You're welcome.
And viewers at home, what a wonderful ministry here, and what a inspiration for us to ask ourselves the question, what can we do for our communities to be the hands and feet of Jesus? We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Edinburgh, and I'm standing at the graveside of this little dog here, Greyfriars Bobby. And exactly 150 years ago he was buried here, and the story goes that when his master died, for 14 years this little dog would faithfully visit and stay on the top of his master's graveyard. A wonderful story of devotion. Well, next up we travel to London to learn about mission in that great city.
I'm here in England, and with me is Max Mackenzie Cook, who is the Community Services Director for the South England Conference, but you have another role that we're going to talk a little bit about today. What is that role?
That's right. I am one of the lead champions for I Am Urban, which is a function of Adra UK.
So I Am Urban, it has something to do with cities, does it?
Yes, and urban areas. Urban areas consist of not just cities, but other densely populated areas, towns, and even some villages as well, where there is a congregation of people that experience certain living conditions, certain environments which are unique, especially with sprawl, urbanization, and all other functions that create pulling people together.
So where did I Am Urban come from?
So we recognized, coming out of a UN report which was published in 2019, that by 2050 70% of the global population would live in urban centres. Now Adra UK, being an international development agency who look after the sustainability development goals as part of their task to try and help develop other areas, were thinking, how could we support our churches here in the UK? One of the ways in which we considered to do that was to focus on this growth in urbanization and empower our churches, resource our churches to be able to minister to the people who would be in those areas.
So what kind of challenges do people face in urban areas?
So it's a paradox. Urban centers create a coming together of people based on a number of factors. You bring people together because of immigration. When they come to certain countries, urban centers provide a sense of security. There are where the jobs are, you've got more housing, you've got better transportation links, but with that you get a certain level of deprivation. You also get higher levels of crime. And so there is a break in community, and we felt that this was a perfect opportunity for our church to showcase what hope looks like, tangible felt needs in urban centers, and what that could mean for the communities that they lived in.
So the needs in the urban communities are not just with immigrants though, are they? Because during the time of COVID, it seems like everything has shifted.
COVID was a massive challenge, and I'm really proud of what the I Am project did during that time, because as you know, we were planning for our usual projects, but as COVID came, we had to rethink everything. And the I Am Urban project really came into the fore. We secured funding, we trained up our hubs, we have 73 of them and we're growing even more of them, and we provided stability in a time when there was increase in food insecurity. We also aided mental health and well-being, and also helped stem some of the growing inequalities that were being exacerbated because of COVID.
Sure. Now, do you have a story you can share of how I Am Urban has maybe impacted somebody's life?
So absolutely, we've got a couple of projects, one in Enfield and Edmonton, which really came into the forefront. They built close partnerships with local vendors and other local businesses in order to provide food and provide support for their local community members. Additionally, we've got another place in Willesden, which is called the Centre of Help and Hope, which continuously provided educational support, food bank support, clothing, as well for the area of Brent. And the people really came together. It wasn't just the fact that we were providing food and clothing, but we built friendships with the people within their communities. We've built long-term relationships, and they actually know that there are churches who exist within their communities. We're not invisible, we're very visible. And now that they look to those churches as centers of hope, real hope, and we find that really helpful.
Now, I think in some areas people recognize poverty readily, but there are places in the world where it's, I think, sometimes harder. It's less visible, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And I think I love that you guys are recognizing that and doing something about that. Now, if somebody wanted to get involved or help out in some way, what could they do? What advice would you give them?
If you go onto Adra's website, adra.org.uk, and go to the I Am Urban link, there will be information there that could send you resources, information of where your local hub may be, and we could either help you set up your own hub or connect you with an existing one, depending on what your needs may be. We would love to hear from you, and so we really look forward to that.
So if somebody wanted to actually get involved with an existing hub, what types of things do you look for?
We just look for a willing heart and a willing spirit. We want people to really get involved. If you contact one of our hubs, they will resource you, they will train you, they'll give you everything that you need to fulfill your role within that little community. We just want people who love to help others and want to give their time. So that's the only thing that is given in terms of a requirement.
I love that, a willing heart. You know, if you've got a willing heart, we can use you. That's fantastic. Max, thank you very much. It's been wonderful talking with you. I wish you God's blessing on I Am Urban. And I think we'll be hearing more about this in the future. At least I hope so.
Thank you.
And to those of you who are watching, please pray for the different opportunities that you're seeing on here. If you have an opportunity to get involved, please do. And now we'll go back to Gary.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, known as Adra, is working in more than 100 countries of the world. Let's learn about what it has been doing during the COVID pandemic.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or Adra, is the global humanitarian arm of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We are a team of more than 10,000 dedicated humanitarians in more than 100 countries who tirelessly serve the world's most vulnerable people every day. For decades, Adra has responded to some of the world's most devastating disasters and crises. But nothing could have prepared us for a global pandemic. COVID-19 forced us to rethink and redesign the way we would face this new crisis. Within days of the pandemic, Adra established a global COVID-19 task force to drive the response. Within weeks, the task force had established a strategy to serve vulnerable people around the world. What did that look like? In response to the pandemic, Adra created 422 projects to serve 20 million people in 96 countries. Adra pivoted to meet needs with the support of our generous partners. The ability to leverage funds strategically helped Adra's response grow to more than $26 million, thanks in large part to the strength and support of our partnerships with the Adventist Church, governments, United Nations agencies, corporations, and other nonprofit organizations. For every $1 that Adra invested, our partners contributed $7. Our work with the church in particular was a major success. Nearly 70% of all COVID-19 response projects were in partnership with our church. Adventists around the world came together to support the mission of Adra. They came together in solidarity for those who were suffering and for those who continue to suffer, so all may live as God intended. Thanks to our partnership with the Adventist Church and other agents of change, Adra is working around the clock to counteract the fallout of the pandemic. For years, Adra has helped communities stay healthy because we understand that when health is affected, little else matters. This is why we have been supporting health projects around the globe to ensure that people are not made more vulnerable by sickness. Ensuring that families remain healthy was never more important than during this devastating global pandemic. To mitigate the impact of the virus, our response included 97 health projects, helping more than 5 million people around the world. Our partnership with Adventist-led health facilities has reached many in need. During this response, Adra delivered tons of personal protective equipment supplies to hospitals and healthcare centers so that health workers and patients alike could be protected. In partnership with Adventist broadcasters, Adra also sent out critically important health messages to millions of people to ensure hand washing and proper precautions to reduce the spread of the virus. Adra also understands that water and sanitation are critical in times of need. During a health crisis especially, proper sanitation does more than almost anything to stop the spread of the virus. And Adra has been hard at work to ensure people around the globe have access to hand washing stations, cleaning alcohol, and proper training of sanitation protocols. This year, our COVID task force has tailored 89 projects to address the needs of water and sanitation. More than 4 million people have accessed these projects. Few fallouts of any crisis, however, can match the desperation of global hunger. As markets collapsed, economies crumbled, and millions lost their jobs, food became harder to find and to afford. Families who had never experienced hunger waited in lines at food banks and distribution centers. Children missed meals. Many felt the pangs not only of hunger, but also of hopelessness. For these reasons, Adra spent $8.5 million to ensure that vulnerable families around the world would not go hungry. In Northern Colombia, Adra worked with the Adventist Church to select 100 Wayuu indigenous families who were unable to work and earn money so they could receive regular food baskets during the pandemic. In total, our COVID task force implemented 134 projects to feed more than 6 million people around the world. During these times of instability and confusion, support systems break down, mental health suffers, and individuals feel isolated and lonely. Adra serves them during this time of great suffering. 58 of our COVID-19 projects are tailored specifically for psychosocial support. 2.6 million people have connected with us through these projects and have learned they are not alone. Since the start of our COVID task force, our 422 projects have assured 20 million precious lives that they will not be defeated by the pandemic. This example has given hope to millions more. As Adra's response grows, our focus will expand to help communities recover from the long term. This forward momentum will see an increased focus in areas of resilience, rebuilding livelihoods, and education for all children. While it is true that the global effects of this novel coronavirus are unprecedented, it is also true that Adra, in partnership with the Adventist Church, has a proven capacity to rise to the occasion. We serve as the hands and feet of Jesus, so all may live as God intended. Not even a pandemic can change that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on today's program, and I hope that you've been inspired and challenged by what you've seen and heard with our 360-degree view of mission around the world. We've seen the challenge of urban mission, crowds of people. We know that when Jesus saw the crowds, he looked at them with compassion because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And thank you so much for the way that you look with compassion on your community and on the needs of the world. Because without your prayers, without your financial support, Adventist mission would not be moving forward. So thank you so much for your continuing generous gifts to global mission and also your contributions to the mission offering. For Adventist Mission, I'm Gary Krause, and I hope that you can join me next time right here on Mission 360.